Brad, can I borrow your guitar real quick?
Oh,
Uh-oh. Don't give him a guitar. Don't turn it on. So it's Easter, and it's also April Fool's. And I just can't pass up a chance for us all to get silly. So, what am I doing? April Fool's. There we go. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick song, just a fun song. I thought about telling a series of jokes, right? It's Easter, it's April Fool's. We figure you're going to tell some jokes, do something like that, and then get serious. So instead of telling some jokes and getting serious, I figure we'll all sort of be in on the joke and get serious in a minute just together. But just to do a fun song. My uncle used to do this song when we gather around with family, and I see some of my family here, and so kind of a fun way to remember. It's kind of an Eastery type song because it's about chickens and eggs. And those are kind of Eastery, right? Little chicks. I don't know. How many of you got chicks during Easter when you were a kid? Some of you got little chicks. And anybody get bunnies when you were a kid? Some of you got bunnies. Anybody decorate your house with chicks and bunnies? Yeah, okay. Some of you aren't admitting the truth, but yeah. So here's a little simple song. It's really easy. This is your part. You just repeat after me. Oh, I once had a hen. You're going to have to let really go. Just let go, you know? All right. You're going to have to lose yourself. The Bible says if you lose yourself, you will find yourself. So you're going to have to lose yourself here for a minute, okay? Oh, I once had a hen. No eggs would it lay. Oh, I once had a hen. No eggs would it lay. My wife said, honey, it sure ain't funny. We're losing money. So why won't it give eggs? And then this rooster came in our yard and took that hen right off its guard. And this is your part. It's giving eggs now, just like it used to before that rooster came in our yard. Sing that with me. It's giving eggs now, just like it used to before that rooster came in our yard. Some of you are looking at me going like, where are you going with this? I once had a gum tree. No gum would it give. I once had a gum tree. No gum would it give. My wife said, honey, it sure ain't funny. We're losing money. So why won't it give gum? And then this rooster came in our yard and took that gum tree right off its guard. It's getting a little weird now. What's it giving? It's giving chicklets just like it used to before that rooster came in our yard. It's giving chicklets just like it used to before that rooster came in our yard. There's only like 100 verses to this thing. I once had an automobile factory. No cars would it give. I once had an automobile factory. No cars would it give. My wife said, honey, we're losing money. It sure ain't funny. So why won't it give cars? And then this rooster came in our yard, did the absolutely ridiculous right off its guard. And what's it giving? It's giving hatchbacks just like it used to before that rooster came in our yard. It's giving hatchbacks just like it used to before that rooster came in our yard. We'll do just one more verse before I lose you here. This is a religious theme. I once had a monastery. No monks would it give. I once had a monastery. No monks would it give. My wife said, honey, it sure ain't funny. We're losing money. So why won't it give monks? And then this rooster came in our yard and took that monastery right off its guard. What's it giving? Thank you. It's giving friars just like it used to before that rooster came in our yard. It's giving friars just like it used to before that rooster came in our yard. All right. April Fool's silly moment. It's really fun to think about Easter on April Fool's because there is this sense in which April Fool's, Easter is kind of like the cosmic joke. It's kind of like this idea that all along we have been and lived in the midst of God's love, and yet somehow we keep forgetting it. The resurrection is less about bodily resuscitation and more about life resuscitation. It's really so much less about just bodily resuscitation. As a friend of mine, a burgeoning friend of mine, I've had a couple of encounters now with Brian McLaren. Some of you guys know who he is, the theologian and writer and speaker around the country. And as I was sitting in a small group and we were studying together, there's about 20 of us over in Dallas, and I remember something he said. He said those very words, it's less about bodily resurrection, about bodily resuscitation. Because if it was, wouldn't there just be hundreds of thousands of Lazarites everywhere? Right? When Jesus raised Lazarus, bodily resuscitation, that's not what resurrection is about. That's such a limited understanding. If you can't accept it in your life as a way of knowing that what God seeks is life resuscitation, life lived more fully, then we miss the whole point. We miss the whole point of his ministry. I read this verse that we used last week. I had Travis, thank you, Travis. I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah, I'm remembering this, and I'm remembering that, and I'm forgetting who you people are, so I'm sorry. I only have so much room in my brain these days. Travis read this verse, this beautiful verse from Isaiah that we read last week from the 58th chapter, and it's such a profound verse. It echoes what Jesus' life echoes what that verse was all about, right? God is speaking through Isaiah. The prophet is speaking to the Jewish people, and they've been living a life of piety, right? Everything's focused around their beliefs and their rigid practices and their ritual practices, and he says, that's fine, but when you do that, you complain that you don't find me anywhere. And why is that? Perhaps it's because it's not really what I'm looking for, says God. What I'm looking for is reaching out to those in need. What I'm looking for is a fast that is about giving of yourself to others. What I'm looking for is someone who's paying attention to the world around them and connecting in passionate, compassionate, just kinds of ways. And then as it says at the end of the text, this beautiful line, which I think is amazing, it says, if you do that, when you do that, I am here. What a profound idea. It's not like call on me and I'll be here. It's like our fish swimming around and suddenly forgetting where he or she was, already swimming in the midst of life. It's like the Wizard of Oz, if you remember that movie. It's this wonderful, wonderful scene in there. I love the Wizard of Oz. And right, they've been sent out after this magical wizard that they meet, this profound voice that echoes and booms and sends them out on this task. And as they get out on the task, they find they've had all these complications, but they finally achieve what they were supposed to do after following this yellow brick road. We all have yellow brick roads. We just get off track. We just lose our paths sometimes. And sometimes we expect the path to be in front of us. But when they finally come back, they're saying to the wizard, okay, we did what you asked. And all of a sudden they noticed the curtains open, right? And that great line, which is one of my favorite, the emperor is naked kinds of lines, that is so profoundly true for so much of life. And they say, they're pointing to who's behind the deal, and the wizard turns around and says, pay no attention to the guy behind the curtain. And suddenly it's all up. There's this inauthenticity that's being practiced that somehow doesn't resonate. But when the wizard finally comes out after having been exposed, he acknowledges the truth as well. You've had it all along. It's been with you all along. You couldn't find it, perhaps, because you were asking for something specific. Make me brave. Make me wise. Give me my home. Get me back home. We've been asking for all these specific things when in reality the answers have always been there. Brian McLaren has another great phrase. He wrote a book entitled, We Make the Path by Walking. It's such a profound, simple idea, but that's what Isaiah is all about. Isaiah is, so you want to experience me? You want to experience the presence of God? Then you reach out. You reach out to one another. As Martin Buber would say, when we meet authentically, there God is in the midst. Life becomes new. Just try it. Just think about the times where you have really not just borne your soul because you had an agenda, but you opened up because you felt free. Or someone opened up to you and you freely received. And tell me that wasn't an ecstatic moment when that happened. Because we experience something beyond ourselves. We experience a larger reality than ourselves. And that's what resurrection is all about. Opening to God in the midst of our lives because it brings new life. When Linda and I were in Philadelphia this last week, we went to Philadelphia primarily because we were trying to take a little bit of a break. Linda was doing a wedding for members of our church who had a destination wedding with their daughters from New York now and living in New York. And so we had it in Cape May, New Jersey. And we decided this was going to be a non-work trip. I didn't do any work. We were going to take a few extra days. She wasn't going to do any work. We were going to have sort of a birthday vacation. I shared with you last week how we met this individual on the street, Devin, in a profound sort of encounter that sort of changed the rest of our trip for us. We had all sorts of meetings like that. You have them too. So I'm sure that if I illustrate, just sharing my story, you've got these same stories of encounters where you simply opened up. Lyft has been a real opportunity to do that for me. Not every Lyft driver is willing to sort of connect at that level, but every now and then they are, and suddenly we discover we're from different worlds and yet we share similar interests, but not even interests, similar passions. And perhaps not even passions, but similar desires to simply open up. And that's a profound thing, right? Because most of our lives we live it like this. That we have these opportunities to always simply open up and see what happens. So we're opening up to this guy, and his name is Anzar, and he's driving a Lyft, and he's picking us up at the airport, and he's going to take us to our hotel in Philadelphia. And he came from Uzbekistan, and his wife came from there, and she's in medical school at Jefferson University, and he just finished studying business at Jefferson, but he says, I drive. I'm not about to try to imitate his accent. Pretty good Jack Nicholson. That was pretty good Jack Nicholson, by the way, Jakey. I don't know where you were, but if y'all picked up on that, well, you just not know. Anyway, I'm not going to go there. So he's sharing with us that he got there and he was hoping for this new life and business. I said, how long you lived here? And he says, 10 years now. I'm a citizen, and my wife's a citizen, and I drive on the side. Just to kind of make a little extra money. He said, our goal isn't to live here in this snowy, country where you can't predict what the weather's going to be like, but it could snow at any moment. Our goal is to live in San Diego. So he says, we're going to go there eventually, but I'm just trying to save money. We said, that's awesome. He says, well, what do you do? And we're not usually ones to go like, oh, we're a minister. How about Lyft confessions now? We're not about to do that, but on this particular thing seemed innocent and free enough, and Linda said, well, I'm a minister. And he kind of slowed down and looked in the mirror, and he says, isn't it amazing? I love America. My wife will be a doctor, and you are a minister. Who would have thought, And I said, well, that's not the only thing. I said, I'm a minister too. He said, that's amazing. Wait till I tell my wife. I met 2 ministers, and they sleep with their ministers. She will laugh, he said. That'll be so much fun. So we just had this great time. It was like we'd met this new friend, and then he dropped us off at the hotel, and he said, we were going to tip him, and he says, no, you don't leave tips, but my son drives for Lyft and Uber, so we left him a tip. And he said, just give me a good rating. But it was such a great experience. And we found that to be true wherever we went. And so when we were at Cape May, we were at the wedding party, and all these strangers who didn't know each other, except for little pockets of friends from different parts of the country. And this first night we're all visiting, and someone looks over to me, one of the young adults, and he says, he's probably in his early 30s, late 20s, and he says, so did you hear Cape May is celebrating their 2nd annual St. Patty's Day polar plunge tomorrow morning? And I said, I did not hear that. He said, I'm thinking about going. He said, would you do that if I did that? Now, it may be because he'd had a few beers. I'm not sure what got him into doing that. It wasn't my excuse for agreeing to do it. It wasn't because of that. My excuse was I just turned 60, and I thought, well, what can I do when I'm 60 but jump in 32-degree water and see if I survive? So I said, sure, I'll do it if you do it. And so a couple of them decided they would do it, and I decided to do it. And the next morning, there we are standing. Now, the night before, I wanted to make sure that this wasn't just a foolhardy thing to do. So I got online and started researching what are the dangers of jumping into 32-degree water, when it's 25 degrees outside. And, of course, hypothermia within 50 or 60 seconds, and then you go unconscious within about 5 minutes. But other than that, not a problem. So I didn't figure I'd be in more than 15 or 20 seconds. And Linda's like, if you're going to do this, then you need to get with that other guy. Y'all take cold showers tonight and stand outside in the 20-mile-an-hour wind where it's 25 degrees. And if you can stand out there for over a minute, then I'll let you go. So that's what we did. Two idiots standing in our boxer shorts, soaking wet, outside on the patio at about midnight and freezing to death. And then the next morning we met, and it was the most wonderful community. It was all for a good cause. It was all for something called Family Promise, which was the local Cape May efforts at home dealing with homelessness and for families who are in need of shelter and such. And so it was a great cause, and we all donated to that and got our T-shirt. But the one thing was how many people come from all these backgrounds. They were from all over the country in Cape May for different reasons, including the people from Cape May. And the whole town comes out to support these strangers who have decided to take a crazy plunge in the water just for the sheer silliness of it, foolishness of it, but at the same time raising money for their local efforts. And so they were there with towels and with bathrobes and one lady with a fur coat. And they were all there to watch us go in, and then the EMTs were about 30 feet into the water. They only got about this high into the water. They said, you can't go past here or you probably won't make it back. And so they stood there to kind of give us a boundary, and then we all ran in. Just before we ran in, there was one of the locals there who was a woman probably in her 40s. And if you look online, you can see her picture next to me. She's standing like this, focused, just piercing focus on the ground. And she says to me while looking at the ground, she says, this is my third time to swear I'll never do this again. And then she just starts running, and we all start running, and I probably was in for 5 seconds, maybe 10. I jumped in the water, turned around, came running back out. I can't feel my feet, I can't feel my feet, I can't feel my feet. And then they threw a towel or a bathrobe around me. People brought out chowder. The whole community came out. But here's the fun thing, right? Here's the fun thing. The rest of the day, I'm walking along carrying my blue towel from the local place, Zante's, which was a crab shack, and I'm carrying it around because they gave it to me. And as people see it, they say, oh, you did the plunge. Thanks for giving to our community. And everywhere I went, there would be other people with towels. Can you feel your feet yet? But everyone came out, and it was part of this support and this sense of belonging suddenly that wasn't there in a strange community. And this is my point to all of that, aside from the sheer foolishness of it. We all have this longing to belong, right? We all have this desire. I've said this before, we wear the shirt that has the sign on it that says, love me. But here's the thing that it didn't occur to me until I started thinking about resurrection. What's underneath that sign? Underneath that sign may be the implicit sense or belief, maybe I'm not lovable, right? Maybe I'm not accepted. And the whole point of resurrection is God's final exclamation point to simply say, accept your acceptance and walk your path. When we do that, we follow what Isaiah had said, and we begin to live out that life of love. Wendell Berry. Band, where's the band? Hey, y'all come on up, band. Y'all can finish in just a second here. Wendell Berry said this wonderful statement that reminded me of a story. You know, Martin Buber, who I mentioned earlier, the Jewish theologian, he had once told this little story about a rabbi named Susha. And Rabbi Susha had told his disciples as he was laying on his deathbed, his disciples noticed how upset he was, and they said, Rabbi, you're going to glory, you're going to be with God eternal, and you seem so upset. And Rabbi Susha was almost tears in his eyes and crying, and he said, I am worried But no, Rabbi. No, they said, Rabbi, you have lived a good life. No, that is not it, he said. I am worried. He said, what I am worried about is that when I get there in heaven, I'll stand before my Creator. And it won't be that my Creator will ask me, why weren't you more like Moses? Why weren't you more like Elijah or Isaiah? He said, my Creator will suddenly stand before me and say, why weren't you more like Susha? And Wendell Berry said once, he said, resurrection is like this. It's how we practice being alive, because part of who you are is who you will become. Amen.